Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Cyrena Arnold, right?
Got it.
So normally I have LinkedIn in front of me. I have your like all your information. So recording live is so much harder.
You've got this, man.
Okay, so now your background is so cool that I literally have notes to introduce you on the back of a napkin, literally. But first, this is only the third episode I ever record in person, and I've got to say, you chose a really, really beautiful area. So we are in Peterborough, New Hampshire, during my first ever trip of New England. And this is just an amazing area, like a really, 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 really beautiful area. So like basically, if I had unlimited time and budget, from here on, I would record every podcast. I would be like, "What's your favorite place?" And let's just meet there, because what a wonderful area. So anyway, thank you for bringing me to Peterborough.
Absolutely.
Cyrena, by the way, it's spelled Cyrena, which in my world in Spanish means siren.
Oh,
right?
nice.
It means mermaid.
Mermaid. I was gonna say no.
So like, I have the hardest time remember to call you Cyrena. Okay, so Cyrena is a meteorologist, C-level at an insurtech, Rethought Insurance, co-founded by my very good friend Nick Lamparelli. CSO at Diversify Thinking. I'm guessing the S is for strategy.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
The New Hampshire 2019 Tech Person of the Year.
Yep. Tech Professional of the Year.
Professional of the Year. I can't read my handwriting. And New Hampshire 40 under 40, and maybe the coolest of all the stuff that you've done, children's book author of The Weather Story, which I actually own 2 copies of.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And the reason I own 2 copies of is because, so as soon as it came out, I bought the first copy. Not the first copy. As soon as you announced it, I bought a copy. And then I'm currently homeless, so everything I own is in storage. So once we agreed to record this in person, I'm like, I need an autograph.
Absolutely.
And like, I would have had to fly back to Atlanta and go to my storage unit to get and God knows where in the storage unit it is.
Yeah.
So first of all, first things first, I absolutely need my autograph of The Weather Story.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
By the way, I did not tell her I was bringing the book.
No, this is a complete surprise, but I love it.
It is very cute. We'll definitely talk about why you chose to write it, and easily available on Amazon. After all, who doesn't want their kids to know more about weather?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
There you
go. Thank you so much. Okay, fantastic. And if you happen to pass away before me, I might eBay it, and I'll use this as I'll use the video as proof that it's a real autograph.
Authentic, totally authentic.
Authentic.
Yes.
That's a little morbid, but okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so going into the actual episode. Okay, so today we are recording on June 1st, 2023, and in my world, even though I'm an insurance nerd, June 1st is the day before my sister's birthday. But the moment, she's actually 25 tomorrow, which is really weird to me because I think of her as a baby, right? She's my only sister. Right as we agreed to record this, the first thing you said is that's the first day of hurricane season.
First day of hurricane season is today.
So awesome. Okay, so where the heck do we start? Okay, so most of my episodes are really insurtech interviews, but I don't believe we might have had Lamparelli to come on to talk about Rethought, but really today we're not talking about Rethought. Rethought, basically super quick, the best commercial flood insurance insurtech out there, period, and doing amazing things. If you don't believe me, listen to the recent review or praise by the godfather of insurance himself. What's his name? I can't remember.
Was it Frank?
Yes. Frank Center.
Yes.
Center. Thank you. I'm so bad with names. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, me too. It's okay.
Okay.
I was messaging him.
So if you're watching today to learn more about Rethought, there we'll point you to other things. So Cyrena, how does a meteorologist, literally, like you were actually a working meteorologist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, like on TV here in New Hampshire, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, on TV in New Hampshire, top of Mount Washington and the Alaska tundra, NASA contractors, like like actual operational meteorology. Yeah.
So how does a meteorologist end up making the move over to insurance/insurtech?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of meteorologists and scientific people are like that very much left-brained analytical type.
Uh-huh.
I'm weird in that I also have a very like creative side and a good translating side. And like my personal mission in life is to translate this world around us in a way that other people can understand. That's why I
Okay.
wrote the book. So I had an interview when I was looking for kind of my next step with a insurtech company called Weather Analytics at the time. Now they're Athenium Analytics. And
They were called Weather Analytics.
They were.
I had no idea.
Yep,
Okay.
that's how they started out.
Okay.
And so I was like employee number 8 with them or something. And at Weather Analytics, and they needed someone that could explain weather to insurance. So that's how my foot got in the door, because I have this natural gift and this natural ability of being able to explain very complex meteorological subjects in an easy to understand way.
Okay.
And that's what they needed.
Hence the children's book.
Hence the kids' book.
Okay.
And so it really just took off from there. And so getting more into insurance and understanding what claims does and what underwriting does, and diving more into that and expanding our weather products and making sure that they were able to understand what we were doing. It showed me that there's just a tremendous need in insurance for that. That there's weather is such a critical part of insurance, but there's a very large gap in knowledge with regard to what's actually happening out there and what insurance needs to know.
Okay. So you're coming into Weather Analytics, which is now Athenium Analytics. How long were you with them?
I was with them for almost 6 years.
Okay. And so this was your first exposure to the insurance side.
Yeah.
So what was your perception? Like you come in and you're like, oh, how complicated can insurance be? So tell me about that process, especially for other science people coming into insurance. Later watching this video. What advice do you have for them?
Be prepared to slow down.
To slow down.
Because insurance, yeah, and that because when you come from a scientific world, things move very quickly. You're looking at data and you're making decisions fast, and insurance is like a large cruise ship in the ocean. You're not going to turn it around quickly, okay? So we're used to being able to turn on a dime and make decisions quickly and do stuff. And insurance is it takes longer for it to move. And I don't think it would be shocking to hear me say that compared to other industries in this world, it's a little slow on the tech side. It's a little behind the times.
Well, and I would add to that. So I've been in insurance for almost 15 years. And I would add to it that part of the issue is that the existing carriers. So Rob Galbraith's book, published by Insurance Nerds, just a disclaimer, The End of Insurance as we know it, talks about how out of the top 10 carriers, the youngest is Allstate. And Allstate, at the time that he wrote the book, maybe 5 years ago, was 80 years old.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So like, think about like the Fortune 500 in general has significant amount of turnover. Like 20 years later, like if you look at the Fortune 500 30 years ago, bunch of oil companies. Today, bunch of tech companies, right at the very top. Right?
Yep.
And that turnover has been a key feature of the history of the Fortune 500.
Sure.
And in the insurance space, State Farm has been the leader for like, I don't know, 50 or 60 years or more. And the top 10 are literally very, very old companies, right? There are insurance companies that are over 100 years old. Nick Lamparelli gave me a great tour of Philadelphia a few years back, just before COVID. I think like 3 years before COVID, and like showed me the Philadelphia Contributorship, founded by Ben Franklin.
Wow,
the oldest cool. Insurance company is older than the country.
Yeah,
and still operating, right?
It's amazing.
And not only that, but like over time, many the carriers have bought each other out. In the survive, and basically the ones that went out of business and got bought out, or got bought out, tended to be the ones that got a little too creative, that got a little too progressive, so to speak. And so the lesson that a lot of the surviving carriers learned is being slow, conservative, and thoughtful.
Yes.
Pace. Now, I personally think that we need to be a lot more progressive on the HR side, on the human resources, on the talent hiring and talent development, and many other technology. But I understand why we underwrite conservatively.
Yes.
And only that, for anybody who's new to the industry, we are the only industry out there that doesn't know the cost of what we sell, sometimes until years or even decades later.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Right. So for anybody who has a business major, either undergrad or MBA or whatever, like cost of goods sold is like the basis that all of business is built on. And in insurance, we don't know that. We have a good guess.
Yeah.
But we don't know that.
Well, the other thing that I think is interesting to note is that it's a little bit of the tortoise and the hare race, right? So insurance is the tortoise. So it's slow, it's steady, it's consistent, it's not risk averse. It's the reason why they are still there. It's why there's no other industry where you have businesses that have been around that long.
Mhm.
So I get that it protects them. I get that it's kept them around. I get that the industry, it's just that it is, it's a different race. If you're looking for, super fast, like a tech company, it's not. And it's an interesting dichotomy in that it's necessary, but it's also kind of the way it's been,
So you did
interesting.
a good job of scaring science and tech people away from insurance with the first like 10 minutes of recording. So why should they actually pursue insurance and insurtech opportunities?
Yeah, that is a good question as well. Because they need it, because I've never seen an industry more ripe for change, because there's an industry, you see it all over, and you're starting to see the people that are starting to take a hold of that change and understand, hey, we need different HR. We need to operate differently. Maybe we do need to think about these risks. One of the first insurance meetings I had, they didn't want to write some weather peril. I don't remember what it was. And it was because the person who was in charge 40 years ago got burned really bad on writing something like that. And so they swore never again. And that's a very, old way of doing things. And people don't do that anymore. And people are starting to make that shift. And so in order to make those changes, they need people that are willing to bring in that change and are willing to kind of put in the work to say, here's why it's beneficial. Here's how it's going to benefit you. And I've never heard an industry more ripe and ears are more ready to actually make that change. So I think now we can be more impactful than ever before.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so first day of hurricane season.
Yes.
Hurricanes, without question, a huge part of the reason insurance is so important. Hurricane Andrew, historically, a radical change to the industry. By the way, if anybody out there was around during Andrew, not just in claims, but anybody who was around on the like risk management side, portfolio management side, on the modeling side, and wants to talk about the effect of Andrew, I'd love to have you on the show. Message me.
Talk to Karen Clark, right? I mean,
make an intro.
Yeah.
I don't think
her story and what she did with Hurricane Andrew and what she was able to forecast and how she changed cat modeling.
Is that the I think Nick's told me her story.
Yeah.
The person that basically invented cat modeling and nobody would buy it, and then Andrew happened, all of a sudden she's the most popular person in insurance.
Yeah, because she was right. Is amazing. She's got a phenomenal story.
I'd love an intro.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nick knows her better than I do.
Okay, perfect. I'll have to jackass. I should have made an intro years ago. Okay. Nick, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Because of this. Okay. Okay. So hurricane season and Rethought TV is it?
Yeah, ReTV.
So tell us about ReTV and why today is such an important day in the insurance world.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Rethought, we do a show that's just for brokers, agents, wholesalers, trying to teach them what they need to know about the weather. So it's that whole being able to translate what's going on. So we'll talk about when the changes to NFIP happen. We were talking about that. We're going to be talking about hurricane season. We try to make sure that we're passing on the relevant information for flood to the brokers. And so it could be weather forecast information, like with all the atmospheric rivers we had some in-depth detailed episodes and also did some live Q&As about the atmospheric rivers where people are able to ask questions. What's happening? Why is this happening? We went through all those details. So that's what ReTV is. It's really just an opportunity to educate as many people in insurance as we can about our peril, about flood. So they're prepared, because we know that we're successful when they're successful. And the flood protection gap is massive. So, 75% of people typically think they have flood coverage with their home insurance policies. And depending where you go, it's somewhere between 2 and 5%. California was 2%. Nationwide, it's like 5%. That's terrible. So there's a lot of people out there that think they're protected and they're not. So we really have to rely on those agents and brokers to sell that information. So the more we can educate them, the better they're going to do.
Okay, so basically, agent, broker, if you sell flood, definitely check out Rethought TV, easily available on YouTube, right?
Yeah, yep, just look up
I'll
ReTV
include the link
on YouTube. And if you don't sell flood, you should be. We've got some phenomenal videos explaining why everybody needs to offer flood. And one of the biggest reasons is if you don't, it's a potential E&O.
Okay. I think that there is a and I've never been an agent, so I'm guessing here a little bit, but I think there's a fear of flood. There's NFIP trauma, basically.
Fair.
The NFIP is not easy to work with. The protection's not great. The right, it's a government organization. And like on the back end, it loses money and it will never catch up, kind of thing.
Correct.
So I think that a lot of agents are either burnt out or just afraid of playing with NFIP at all. And commercial flood is so new that like, especially agents that have been around for 10 years or more, they just their original perspective on flood was, I won't touch that because I had one bad experience with NFIP, and they just never came back.
Yeah.
Right. But I had never thought about it in a E&O perspective.
Yeah, because when you think about it, if 75% of the people think they have that coverage and something happens and they don't, they're going to come back to you and ask why. So you have to offer flood on everything you do. And the good thing is there's more options than just NFIP. We know it's got its downsides. It serves a specific purpose and it fits that very well, but not everybody fits into that mold. So if you want higher limits, if you want different coverages, if you want different deductibles, commercial flood is so much more flexible. But I mean, it really needs to be offered to everybody, because you have to remember, we also know that there's flood zones out there, right? And one of the biggest misconceptions is that you have to be in a flood zone. Truth of the matter is everybody lives in a flood zone. Everybody.
Yeah. I mean, so many Lamparelli quotes I want to bring up in my world. So I have this memory from like 10 years ago, like in a gas station, getting gas with an old style Bluetooth, like the ones that like extended out, having a conversation with one of my first conversations with Nick Lamparelli, and basically like I made the mistake of saying, but how can you possibly compete with an NFIP? According to CPCU, I'm a giant CPCU fan, and back when I got my CPCU, like book 1, chapter 1 of CPCU 500 literally said earthquake and flood are not insurable in the private market. And so like I mentioned that to Nick, and then like he spent.
I'm surprised you still have your head.
Yeah, he's well, we're on the phone, right? But he spent an hour like explaining both why it is insurable with current technology, and why he's crazy, and this is like 4 years before he actually founded Rethought. Why the idea for Rethought actually made sense. And it's been amazing to like continue having that conversation with him over time as Rethought actually gets created and has grown over time. So yeah, flood, hugely important, and an area of insurance that seems to be having incredible advancement in the last like 5 to 6-7 years.
Yes.
From just NFIP being the only player in town.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. So ReTV, check it out. The book, check it out. Okay. So
it is the start of hurricane season.
Yes.
Like today.
Yes.
Like today is day number 1. Now they can occur elsewhere outside. We've had some hurricanes happen even as early as January. But yeah, I mean, hurricane season begins today, which is the time where hurricanes are statistically more likely to occur. The peak of the season really happens in August and September. But there's actually a cluster of clouds, a disturbance of something that's going on out there right now in the Gulf of Florida that they're looking at, that they expect to form into something tropical, about a 50% chance in the next 48 hours. So, I mean, we're already getting started, even though it's the first day.
Okay. So there's several things in my mind. So I'm from Costa Rica originally. Costa Rica is earthquake prone, but not hurricane prone. So when I first came to the States, I went to Iowa. And tornado prone, but I'm not hurricane prone. So my grandpa used to have an apartment in Miami, hurricane prone. So my understanding of hurricane risk before I worked in insurance, when I first came to the States, was basically Florida, the Gulf states, Texas, big hurricane risk.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the country, not so much. And like the idea of New York City getting hit by a big hurricane, like, never ever occurred to me that could be a thing.
Yeah.
And just in the last couple of years, didn't we have a hurricane that basically like traveled over like 800 miles of land in one way or another? Like what's happening with hurricane risk today?
Yeah, no, it is evolving and it is changing. And it's something that, especially we don't have a large data set on either. So our ability to understand hurricanes really took off in the 1970s when we launched satellites to actually take a look. Otherwise, we missed about half of what was going out there before then. So really, in the grand scheme of things, the information we have is relatively new. Yeah, storms can impact everywhere from Texas all along the Gulf Coast through Florida, all the way up to the Northeast. Nova Scotia, out past Maine, got hit by a major storm last year. And wreaked havoc on Cape Breton and places like that.
I thought hurricanes were warm weather. Like Nova Scotia is
cold.
North of Canada.
It's Canada. Yeah, I know. It is. Now, I mean, technically, once they move beyond a certain latitude and the water temperature changes, they are extratropical and their mechanisms are not fueled by the warm water anymore. But it still was a devastating storm that had tropical origins. Then you were able to look at other storms. We all remember Hurricane Ian. And then there was Hurricane Ida, the one that made landfall in the Gulf, and everyone was forecasting this to be a typical hurricane, went across the entire southeastern United States and wreaked havoc in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, with record flooding that hit these places as well. So the ability and the outreach of these storms is just phenomenal. They can happen everywhere and anywhere really. So, except for the Pacific coast where the water's a lot cooler. Actually, for the equal lines of latitude and across the United States, the Pacific is 10 degrees cooler than the Atlantic Ocean.
That's incredible. Is it just because it's a lot larger, or?
It's because of the ocean circulations. So all of these oceans, the Atlantic, the northern part of it rotates clockwise, so does the northern Pacific. And so on the Pacific side, we're actually bringing cool air from the north down the western coast, but on the east coast, we're bringing warm air from the south. So this is why you don't see the hurricane and tropical development on our side of the Pacific like you do in the Atlantic. So as long as you're anywhere along these Atlantic states or coastal and even inland, they can bring torrential rains. We've seen horrific flooding through Kentucky and through Tennessee, through the heart of the nation here in these instances, where they're just bringing a tremendous amount of rain to mountainous areas, which goes down to the mountains, the valleys, pools, floods the rivers. I mean, hurricanes are an everybody problem.
An everybody problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you brought up the book, so I'm assuming that you were gonna.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a book person, and so you were talking about where they can happen, and there's a great book by Dr. Lourdes Aviles, who teaches at Plymouth State here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And there was a huge storm, the Great Storm, taken by storm 1938, profiles a 1938 hurricane that wrecked the Northeast, New Hampshire, Vermont, like inland New England places that were absolutely obliterated by a storm back in the 1930s.
Okay, awesome. Well, not awesome, but
yeah, I get it. No, I get it. You're talking to a meteorologist, so I get it.
So you're a meteorologist, not a climatologist, and I do understand that those are different things.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you. I love that.
I'm enough of a nerd, and for anybody who doesn't understand, any other insurance pro who doesn't understand, basically, a meteorologist, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a meteorologist worries about the weather this week.
Yep.
Right. And a climatologist worries about the long-term climate patterns.
Yes.
Okay? So I realize you're not a climatologist. You're the closest thing I have today to a climatologist. In fact, I have not had a climatologist on the podcast. If you're a climatologist that's playing within the insurance space, please reach out. I want you on the podcast. Okay. So, climate change. And our industry is very conservative. I am not, but our industry is very conservative.
Sure.
I have already seen a giant change in our industry from when I joined 15 years ago. The mention of climate change was almost a no. I remember I worked at a really big carrier, and I remember sitting in meetings as a very entry-level claims person and hearing things like, we've had record loss years for the last 4 years, but it's just bad luck. We're like, this is an unusual pattern. Like, things will get better. And then by my last years at a carrier, 6 or 7 years later, now the talk was much more. This is like, they still wouldn't say the word climate change.
Yeah.
But they would say we're preparing accordingly. Like, if this is the new normal.
Yeah, the new normal.
We're reserving accordingly. We're underwriting accordingly. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a sensitive topic for our industry now. Last thing that I'll say before jumping into your point of view on it, maybe 3 years before COVID, we had a NASA scientist speak at the CPCU annual meeting, and like basically do the equivalent of like slap everybody and say, "Wake up, you moron! You have millions of dollars on the line or billions of dollars on the line. This is real, right? And like show us the science."
Right.
Okay. So how is climate change affecting hurricane risk and flood risk, and how is it likely to affect it in the future?
Yeah. All right. So these are good questions. And honestly, it's hard to say.
Okay.
I'd love to say this is exactly what's happening.
Science isn't always clear cut, or rarely clear cut.
Well, like, a decent amount of information to understand. And so we're still trying to gather that information and understand what's happening. And so think about this from insurance. If you have an evolving climate, this isn't a stationary climate. Say it is here, and then tomorrow it's here, and the next year, right? And maybe these are years. If you're writing everything you do and looking at all your data information based upon from this point back, how well are you going to be prepared for this? And so that's what we have to understand, is that it is changing, it is evolving. So we do have to look at trends. We do have to see how things are changing. The climatologists and the smartest people out there in these fields say the climate is changing. We do think we can see an increase in severity and frequency of storms. Maybe one will pan out more than the other in the future, but it's going to be a wait and see attitude. So insurance gets to decide, are we going to sit back and wait and do nothing and write on all the old ways we used to do things? Or are we going to start taking into account some of this limited future information we have, even though it's limited, start taking into account and hopefully see some better decisions? Because we're not going to know how it pans out for another 10 years, 30 years, 50 years. Going to be interesting to look back and say, gosh, I wish we would have. It's going to be the shoulda, coulda, woulda game. And I don't think people need to do that. I think we can start looking at some trends and information now. But if you're turning a complete blind eye to it, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Any other book recommendations, podcast recommendations? Okay, so a young insurance professional or insurtech professional watches this and goes like, this whole weather/climate can be either side thing looks super interesting, and I want to nerd out on this. Short of using your tuition reimbursement to go and get another major and get a second bachelor's in meteorology or climatology.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, because it's the start of hurricane season, I brought another book. There's a great book called A Furious Sky by Eric J. Donlan that I really like. And it is a 500-year history of hurricanes in the United States.
It's about 500 pages.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But it's great. I'm just getting into it. I'm just starting it. I figured it was appropriate.
Uh-huh.
But it's great because it opens up with like when the people made civilizations and colonies in the United States and how the colonization of America was altered by hurricanes. And it starts there.
Fantastic. That reminds me a ton of Underwriters of the United States. I can't remember the author's name. I've had her on the podcast, and I have the first autograph. Like literally, like she told me on Twitter that I own the very first autograph copy of the book.
Nice.
But anyway, her book is all about how insurance was critical for the U.S. To go from being founded to where it is today, and even before the founding. So now this is super interesting. So basically, how storms have affected the way that the U.S. was colonized.
Yeah, and that's where it begins. But it's a complete 500-year history, so it's going into the details of Hurricane Andrew and all these other storms as well, and some of the recent stuff, and it's talking about how understanding hurricanes changed with the implementation of satellites. So it's just a great way to geek out about, if you want to understand hurricanes, why don't you grab a 500-year chunk of it and get started? It's a cool read. It's a cool read.
Okay, so is there an audiobook version?
There probably is. I'll probably be switching to that if there is, because things are getting busy now.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so anything else? Any other podcast or book that might be a good? I think this is quite enough.
Yeah, I mean, you sent them to ReTV, which is good. I mean, we try to put as much information out there as possible as we can. There's a ton of good information and resources, but yeah, I think that's good for right now.
Okay. So kind of as we close up here, so out of the 10,000 things that you're involved with, so the latest one is what is it? The Diversify.
Oh, Diversify Thinking.
So what is Diversify Thinking?
Yeah, Diversify Thinking is an organization that I volunteer with. Where we are just trying to change work culture and change the way women work. So we had a conference recently called Forward Together. We had that back in April, where we brought in people to help sort of standardize the importance of your mental health and talk about, some of the biases that we see in the industry and some of the sexism that takes place in all of our industries and across the globe. Yeah. And it was this phenomenal, eye-opening, like workshop type of really get down to the nitty-gritty in some of these areas and really trying to help women be the best version of themselves possible.
Fantastic. Where can people find more information on that?
Yeah, diversifythinking.com. We're going to have another conference for Forward Together in 2024. And we're also talking about maybe some online options. So that's going to be really
Where was conference one?
It was here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So it was in Bedford, New Hampshire.
But this is not a New Hampshire only organization.
No,
Okay.
no. So we had people come from Vermont and Maine. And so we're going to, have people hopefully coming from all over New England and maybe even bigger area in the future. And we're talking about maybe some online options as well, because this was really, really great. We did an NPS score of the conference when we were done. I'm a big fan of NPS score information. And we had over 90% of the respondents reply back to us. And we had an NPS score for the conference of like 92.
Fantastic.
So it was.
I have no idea what conference standard scores are, but 92 is fantastic in anything.
It was awesome. I mean, it was so well received. We're so pumped. We're gonna do it again. It was one of the best events I've ever been to.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Any final words? Any word of advice to anybody that made it this deep into the conversation is a giant nerd. By the way, I love the fact that we're both such big nerds, and we both brought books without telling the other and pulled them out during the conversation. That's the beauty of recording in person. So first of all, any words of advice for people going into insurtech, whether they're coming from insurance or whether they're coming from outside of insurance?
Yeah. You got to try to break down as many walls and barriers as you can. Communication is key. That's really the biggest thing. The more you can get an organization to communicate internally, externally, understand what their customers' needs are, break down those walls and communicate as much as you can over and over again.
Okay. And any other closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Just keep your eye on, it's hurricane season, right? So always keep an eye out for the forecasts. You can get weather forecast information. A lot of places, the National Hurricane Center in the United States is fantastic. nhc.noaa.gov is a great resource to help you understand what's going on. They, the Hurricane Center every year at the end of every season actually does statistical analysis on their forecasts to try to improve them next year. So if you read some of the things that are happening this year, they're extending some of their outlooks and forecasts and able to decrease the size of the cone of uncertainty. Every year, the forecast information is getting better and better and better. And they made some really big leaps this past summer. So, or this coming summer, some big changes are coming.
Fantastic. I'm a big fan of Rethought TV, and thank you for educating my world with the weather piece, which I can't think of anybody that did this before.
It's awesome.
I mean, I don't think the word weather was ever mentioned in my CPCU or any other of my designations. So fantastic. Statistically speaking, you might not be at Rethought forever. So, assuming that you don't take Rethought TV with you, I'm guessing that for the future, the best way for us as a community to continue learning from you is follow you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can definitely follow me. So everything on any social media, LinkedIn, everything is WX Cyrena, WXCYRENA. I'm on all of the social media platforms, just trying to, translate this complex world around us to everybody who's willing to listen.
Okay. So on all social media platforms, so I do have to ask. So on TikTok,
yeah,
are there dances involved in your weather things on
so
TikTok?
I just got back from a week-long storm chasing trip out west, and I'm about to post like a bunch of pictures and stuff, and so crazy weather stuff that we did. But if you go storm chasing with me, you better be prepared for the 80s playlist. Okay, I love the 80s song. So I do have a clip on TikTok of me and the people in my car just jamming out. We're not really dancing, but we are singing out loud very badly all of the 80s hits. It was awesome. That
is fantastic. Awesome. If you don't mind sharing that,
sure,
send it over, and I'll include it at the end of this. So nice. For the listeners, if you stick around, we'll have that video attached to the end of this episode.
Only for you, Tony. You got it.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for everything today. This has been absolutely wonderful. Anybody who hasn't been to Petersburg, New Hampshire, beautiful little area here. Is it downtown Petersburg?
Yeah, we're in downtown Peterborough. It's in the Monadnock region of New Hampshire, southwestern New Hampshire. I'm biased. It's beautiful.
Come in late May, early June. Everybody's told me that I chose like the perfect time to come before it gets too hot and after it's been too cold.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.